You know, as an infectious disease researcher, I literally spend my life tracking pathogens, figuring out how they move and how they spread through human populations. And right now, there is a deeply worrying maritime medical emergency unfolding right out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. So let's dive right into this. We are looking at the MV Hondius. It's a polar cruise ship that has currently been transformed into a floating quarantine zone. What started out as a luxury expedition has rapidly evolved into an incredibly complex epidemiological puzzle, leaving multiple passengers dead and several others critically ill.
So, the big question we have to answer in this explainer is this. How in the world does a rare, primarily rodent-borne virus trigger a deadly outbreak on a luxury cruise ship? I mean, think about it. Right now, this vessel is anchored just off the coast of Cape Verde. You've got 149 passengers and crew on board, representing 23 different nationalities. And they are completely isolated, literally barred from disembarking by local authorities. To understand how we actually got here, we've got to look closely at the biology of the pathogen itself.
Section 1. Anatomy of the outbreak. Now, from a clinical perspective, what's deeply fascinating about this pathogen is its very nature. Hantaviruses are a family of viruses spread mainly by rodents. Usually, you contract it through exposure to the urine, droppings, or saliva of infected rats or mice, often just by breathing in aerosolized particles. But here's the catch. The ship's operator has flat out stated there are no rats on the vessel. For researchers like myself, that immediately sets off alarm bells. It tells us that the initial exposure almost certainly happened on land, either right before boarding or maybe during shore excursions.
And this really illustrates why this virus is so incredibly deceptive. The clinical progression starts off with early symptoms that totally mimic the flu. Fever, severe muscle aches, chills, maybe some gastrointestinal issues. But then, 4 to 10 days later, it progresses to Hantavirus pulmonary syndrome, or HPS. This is the scary part. This is where patients experience coughing, severe chest tightness, and literally fluid filling the lungs. It is exceptionally dangerous, carrying a fatality rate of around 38%. But honestly, as a researcher, the absolute most critical detail here is the incubation period. Symptoms can take anywhere from 1 to 8 weeks to appear after that initial exposure.
Section 2. Tracking the viral spread. So, when we trace this epidemiological timeline across the ship's 6,000-mile journey, a really clear pattern starts to emerge. The MV Hondius departed from Ushuaia down in southern Argentina on April 1st. By April 11th, a 69-year-old Dutch man became the first tragic fatality. When the ship reached St. Helena, his body was removed and his 69-year-old wife disembarked. But then, she collapsed and passed away on April 26th during her journey back to the Netherlands. It's just awful. The very next day, April 27th, a British passenger was medically evacuated in critical condition. And by May 2nd, a German citizen died on board. When you look at those dates, they align perfectly with that long incubation window we just talked about. It means the seeds of this outbreak were planted weeks before the severe symptoms actually hit.
That brings our current clinical count to 7. Yep, 7 confirmed or suspected cases. This includes those 3 tragic fatalities we just discussed, plus 4 other individuals who are currently displaying symptoms. Among those 4 are the critically ill British patient, who's currently in an ICU in Johannesburg, South Africa, along with 2 crew members suffering from acute respiratory symptoms, and 1 other individual identified by the World Health Organization.
Section 3. Experts weigh in. To really solve an epidemiological mystery of this scale, we've got to look at the consensus forming among leading scientists. Dr. Charlotte Hammer, an infectious disease expert at Cambridge, points out something absolutely vital. Because the incubation period is up to 8 weeks, she states, it is quite possible and even likely that the cases have been exposed during their time in South America. And she's spot on. Argentina has known endemic regions for hantavirus, which makes that departure point highly significant for our contact tracing efforts.
Building right on that, Dr. Julia Gallo from the Purebrate Institute really narrows down the specific pathogen for us. She notes that the Andes virus is found in this part of South America, and the symptomatology aligns with what is known about the Andes virus infection. Let me tell you, identifying the Andes variant is a total game changer. It dictates all of our countermeasures, which is exactly why aggressive serology and genetic sequencing of these patients are the fundamental next steps.
But guys, here is the most alarming clinical aspect of this specific outbreak. Dr. Maria van Kerkhove of the WHO stated, "Our working hypothesis is that there's probably a couple of different types of transmission that might be happening." Now, remember how I said hantavirus is typically only caught from rodents? Well, the Andes variant is completely unique. It is literally the only hantavirus known to occasionally spread from human to human. It usually happens between close contacts, sharing tight quarters. Exactly like a cruise ship cabin.
Section 4.
containment, and next steps. Okay, so the crucial point we really need to understand here is the divergence in risk. From a clinical perspective, the risk on board the ship, it's high. The microenvironment of those shared cabins and the potential for localized exposure means they require maximum physical distancing and super strict isolation protocols. However, the general public risk remains very low. Even with this Andes variant, the virus does not spread easily through the general population like a common cold does. So there is absolutely no need for widespread panic or broad travel restrictions.
So here's where the whole situation stands today. The MV Hondius remains anchored off Cape Verde. Local authorities are flat out refusing disembarkation to protect their island population, though they have prepped some onshore isolation capacity just in case. Meanwhile, medical evacuations are actively being planned to fly the 2 symptomatic crew members to the Netherlands, and the WHO is currently in talks with Spanish authorities to potentially reroute the entire vessel to the Canary Islands, where a comprehensive risk assessment, medical screening, and safe handling can actually take place. As researchers, we're going to keep a very close eye on the serology reports and the transmission dynamics of this highly unusual Andes virus cluster. Honestly, it's a stark reminder of just how interconnected our natural and human environments really are. With global travel bouncing back to pre-pandemic levels, it leaves us with a pretty critical question. Are our international health systems truly prepared to catch the next localized outbreak before it crosses an ocean? If you found this helpful, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and click the notification bell so you don't miss future updates.